Political party realignment is a set of ideas where people sharply change the party they vote for. An example of this happening can be found by looking at a map of the 1964 presidential election. Notice the southern states of Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and South Carolina are comfortably red states, but if we roll back the clock just 4 years, you'll see this. Now look at those states in 1960. They all went Democratic. That right there is an example of party realignment. The first major instance of party realignment occurred between the 1790s and 1850s. That's an entire 60 years and a whole lot happened during that time, so try to stay with me while I explain it all. We first start in the 1790s with the first party system. The first party system consisted of two main political parties, the Federalist Party that was largely created by Alexander Hamilton, and the Democratic Republican Party, which was created by Thomas Jefferson and James Madison. The Federalists were very dominant in the early American politics until the election of 1800, which saw Thomas Jefferson be elected the third president of the United States. Following the election of 1800, the Federalist Party never returned to power and were always the oppositional party, which resulted in their beliefs being reactionary. This led to the party never regaining power and falling apart around the time of the War of 1812. Shortly after the end of the war started the Era of Good Feelings, which was a time known for brief political unity and national pride that also helped the decline of the Federalist Party. Following the end of the Era of Good Feelings, we enter a time of the second party system. The second party system consists of two main political parties, the Democratic Party, which was led by Andrew Jackson, and the Whig Party, which was led by Henry Clay and Daniel Webster. The Democratic Party focused on the common man, westward expansion, and states' rights while also opposing elitist institutions such as the National Bank. The Whig Party, on the other hand, focused on having a strong national government, internal improvements, and protective tariffs. The rise of Jacksonian democracy marked a major political shift in the US fueled by expanded voting rights and a wave of populist energy. In the 1820s, many states dropped party requirements for voting, opening the door for a much larger number of white men, especially small farmers, frontier settlers, and working-class laborers to participate in elections. These new voters had been largely shut out of politics before, and Andrew Jackson spoke directly to them. He cast himself as a man of the people, someone who stood up against the wealthy elites and political insiders who had long controlled the government. His message hit home, and his movement helped reshape the old Democratic-Republican Party into what became the Democratic Party. This realignment didn't just change the party labels, it shifted political power away from the traditional Eastern establishment and toward a broader, more populist base. Jumping forward to 1854, we start seeing the collapse of the Whig Party. This was largely due to the fact the Whig Party wasn't unified in their beliefs. Northern Whigs tended to be anti-slavery and against the spread of slavery into new territories, whereas the Southern Whigs were pro-slavery. These differing opinions on slavery came to the forefront in 1850 with the Compromise of 1850. These new set of laws were put into place to maintain the balance of free and slave states by alternating between the two every time a state was added. This caused even more divide within the Whig Party, ultimately leading to the collapse of the party. Following the collapse of the Whig Party, most northern anti-slavery Whigs joined the anti-slavery Republican Party, and most southern pro-slavery Whigs joined the American Party and later the Constitutional Union Party. This realignment, combined with the election of Abraham Lincoln and the Republican Party in 1860, led to the rise of the Republican Party. Skipping forward a couple of years, the Civil War had ended and the country is figuring out how to rebuild and move forward. The Republican Party has maintained its popularity in the North and has helped the newly freed slaves maintain their rights, which helped the Republican Party further. The Republican Party had officially made a name for itself as the party of progress and the party of moving forward compared to the Southern Democrats, which had just seceded from the Union and lost a war. This sentiment would last into the early 20th century, where we would find ourselves in another era of realignment. The election of 1896 marked the beginning of the fourth party system, and with that came President McKinley. William McKinley ran on the platform of maintaining the gold standard, protective tariffs, and American expansionism. This marked the beginning of a mainly Republican time in American politics. A Republican held the presidency for 16 years straight after the election of McKinley, with a brief break of Woodrow Wilson, a Democrat, holding the office from 1913 to 1921. After Wilson left office, there were another 12 years of Republican presidents. It was safe to say the American people liked where the Republican Party was taking the country, but the election of 1932 was set to change that up.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy.
I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia.
In 1932, Franklin Delano Roosevelt was elected president as a Democrat. He ran on the platform of the New Deal coalition, which was supposed to help the American people through the Great Depression. Because of the economic position that the United States was in during the time of the election of 1932, and the inability of Republicans to do anything to remedy the extreme nature of the Great Depression, many voters decided to leave the Republican Party. These voters turned to the Democratic Party and therefore turned to voting for Roosevelt. These voters included Southern white voters, which looked to Roosevelt to fix the unfortunate economic situation taking place in the United States. Within the platform that Franklin D. Roosevelt was running on and hope he was bringing to the people of America, the Democratic Party became the party of liberalism where it stands today. In the late 1960s came the Civil Rights Movement and brought plenty of party realignment with it. Many Southern voters that voted for FDR only decades ago now felt the Democratic Party wasn't the party for them because the Democrats supported the Civil Rights Movement. This led many Southern white voters to move towards the Republican Party and helped create the conservative stronghold that the South is today. During the election of 1968, Richard Nixon employed a strategy called the Southern Strategy. This strategy consisted of using dog whistles, which is a term to define coded language that appeals to a certain group of people. Nixon used these dog whistles to speak to Southern voters' fears and anxiety toward the new civil rights policies. He also campaigned on states' rights, law and order, and the silent majority, which Nixon believed to be the people who didn't participate in protest or civil rights reforms, but were upset with the direction the country was headed. This strategy won Nixon the election in 1968 and furthered the Republican stronghold that is the Southern United States to this day.
So help me God.
Now, I congratulate you, sir.
36 cents. That's what this $1960 is worth today.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Ronald Reagan became president in 1981, and with his election came a new era in American politics. The effects of the Reagan presidency can in some ways still be felt to this day. Reagan took advantage of the idea that America was straying further and further away from the traditional values that once ruled the nation. Reagan saw the counterculture movements and the liberal policies of the 1960s and 1970s and how some voters were heavily against them, and decided to use that as a strategy to get him elected. Reagan also appealed to the rise of new conservatism in the United States that consisted of economic conservatives, social conservatives, anti-communists, and Southern whites. Reagan's presidency helped the Republican Party find its identity as the party of the white working-class voters, business owners, and evangelical Christians, which in many ways can still be felt to this day. Reagan's election led to another period of Republican dominance in the 1980s and 1990s, and it likely helped George H.W. Bush and his son, George W. Bush, get elected as president.
And with that, I just have two more words to say. Obama out.
I am officially running for President of the United States.
So help you God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
Over the last couple of decades, America has undergone another shift that is much more resemblant of secular realignment, which I referenced earlier. In recent American history, there have been cultural shifts mainly in suburbia, which was once a Republican stronghold and is now a battleground. Many elections have been and will continue to be decided in suburban areas of this country. If we look at Metro Detroit as an example, we see that many cities closer to Detroit proper have maintained a strong Democratic stance. If we move out from the suburbs immediately bordering Detroit and focus on a suburb a little farther out, such as Canton Township, we can see that Canton is very purple. Purple is a way of describing an area that is equally liberal and conservative because of the colors used to represent these two ideologies. When blue and red are mixed, the result is purple. According to the Canton Township website, the 2024 general election had 58% of voters voting for the Democratic candidate Kamala Harris, and 37% of voters voting for the Republican candidate Donald Trump. Education has also become a big topic when it comes to voting. In recent years, the level of education one has received, in most cases, follows a trend of who that person votes for. Voters with a high school diploma or less tend to vote more conservative, whereas voters with a college degree tend to vote more liberal. These factors also play a massive role in who gets voted for and can draw lines and make people identify with certain political parties over others. Barack Obama's election in 2008 was an important moment in history of not only politics in the United States, but also how far we've come as a nation. Once the nation that supported slavery now had an African-American leader. This election helped solidify the Democratic Party's ideology and cemented the start of a new Democratic coalition. This coalition was rooted in young people, racial and ethnic minorities, and college-educated voters. In 2008, the United States saw a record-shattering African-American voter turnout in key swing states such as Florida, Ohio, and North Carolina. Latino and Asian Americans also swung heavily in the favor of the Democrats, as well as the LGBTQIA+ voters. The 2008 election was an overall very important election for Democrats to build their voter base, but also important in the sense of who was elected president. While the Democrats were working to bring in minorities and underrepresented people, the Republican Party was securing their voter base of rural, older, white working-class voters that in 2016 secured Donald Trump's presidency. Political party realignment is the idea that party ideologies can sharply change. This has happened at many points in history, but the main points were in 1800, 1828, 1860, 1896, and finally 1932. But many argue there have been more recent periods of political realignment. If you take one thing away from this video, it should be the point of the importance of voting. None of these periods of realignment would have been possible without people getting out to vote and involved in their communities.